that time of year again. The weather is a little cooler. There's a crisp feel of fall in the air, and the smell of pumpkin spice radiates from every coffee shop. Which means only one thing as far as drive home reviews is concerned. That's right, folks. It's time once again for This Is Halloween reviews. So this year, I've decided we're going to go in a little bit different route. You know, last year, the first time I did this, it was just kind of a random assortment of films. No real theme or no real path. Just some interesting films that fit the Halloween spirit. But I've decided that this year, I want to actually try a theme for This Is Halloween reviews. But what theme to go with? Well, you know, one thing I've noticed is that not every Halloween classic, as far as I'm concerned, has to deal with ghouls and goblins and blood and guts and crippling emotional fear. Sometimes you just want to dance while you're being chased around by some guy in a Halloween costume. So this year, for Drive Home Reviews presents This Is Halloween reviews, folks, we're going campy. That is right. We are going to be taking a look at some campy horror classics. Because one thing I have learned, when the campy meets the creepy, the results can be truly scary. And what better way to start off our look at campy Halloween classics than with something that has long been considered one of the true horrors of Hollywood. We're looking at an Elvis movie. Okay, calm down. You know, for years, Elvis films have kind of lived in this land of myth and folklore as the worst abominations ever put to film. I don't know how you can think that when the collective works of James Cameron are sitting right there. But there it is, you know. People just think that the Elvis movies are a travesty, and I do not think that is a fair statement in the very, very least. I think when an Elvis movie is working, when an Elvis movie is focused, I think that's the key thing. When an Elvis movie is focused, they're fun little films. There's nothing really wrong with them. I mean, they're not Hamlet, but, you know, that's kind of good in my opinion, but you know what I mean. They're fun distractions. They're drive-in movies. They're popcorn movies. You go to have a laugh, hear the catchy new songs Elvis is hyping that week, and not for nothing, but for a guy in the 60s, you probably went to look at Anne Margaret or any number of attractive young women who was chasing after Elvis that week. Harmless fun. That's when they were focused and on their game. When they weren't, when they were at their worst, yeah, I can attest, they are pretty horrid and in some cases downright unwatchable. But the problem is that most Elvis movies don't exist in the really focused and on task area, and they don't also fall into the crime against nature and cinema file. Instead, most Elvis movies rest somewhere in this middle ground, and that's where things get really, really messed up. Middle-of-the-road Elvis movies are so chaotic, and yes, I'll reuse the same buzzword, so unfocused, that it feels like they were written sometimes by 5 or 6 different people who had no idea what the other writer was doing. They shift track, they shift gear, they shift genre out of absolutely nowhere. Part of this is due to the formula in which the Elvis movies were kind of forever trapped. I mentioned this in my Abbott and Costello reviews, that for a long time the Abbott and Costello films were not concerned with having any kind of plot or any kind of logical through line. The plot was there to basically link Abbott and Costello to whatever comedy routine they were going to do next. And the same is true with the Elvis movies. they were not concerned with the story. The scenario was there to just get people into the theater, and then we follow Elvis from scene to scene until he hits on the next attractive woman or sings the next what they hope would be a chart-topping song. So because all they were worried about was getting him to the next musical number, the plot, again, just sometimes could go so far off the rails. Case in point, the subject of today's discussion, the 1965 film Tickle Me. Horrifying name, isn't it? You're probably wondering, why am I reviewing this for a Halloween review? We'll get to that. We will. So Tickle Me, this falls in about the middle of Elvis's film career. This is his 18th movie, 18th out of 31. Think about that. They were pumping these babies out like nobody's business. So, what is the story here? All right, so see if you can follow along with me. So, in this film, Elvis plays Lonnie. Lonnie is a champion rodeo rider who is currently unemployed during the rodeo off-season, and through happenstance and shenanigans, he ends up being employed at a working dude ranch, which also doubles as a, I guess the term would be fat farm, where women go to lose weight. It should be noted that the women at this supposed weight loss dude ranch do not look like they need to be at a weight loss dude ranch. In fact, I think most of them look like they could stand to have one or two more meals. There's no real anorexia going on here, but there's some skinny chicks, you know. But that's okay. This is just an excuse to have hundreds of women around to drool over Elvis. That's the whole, the whole purpose here. So, whilst working at this dude ranch, Elvis meets our love interest for the tales. Bond has the Bond girls. So are these Elvis girls? Do they have an official title? I guess not. But he meets Pam, played by Jacqueline Lane. Pam has your typical romantic comedy reaction. Ooh, I hate you, Elvis. I hate your bravado and your singing, and you're never gonna catch me. I'm got the heart of ice. And then, slowly but surely, meaning within 3 or 4 scenes, he melts her heart of ice, and she is all about Elvis. This is the basic plot of this Elvis movie. To be fair, this is the basic plot of just about every Elvis movie. So things are going along fine and dandy. Elvis's official title at this working dude ranch is that he's there to handle the horses, but that's actually not what takes up most of his time. What takes up most of his time is breaking into song every 3 seconds so all the ladies can leave their workouts and instruction to go dance with him. This seems to work out fairly well. But you can't have a romantic comedy without the all is lost moment, when the couple has to break up. And in this film, that moment comes when Elvis's boss, played by an actual horror icon, Julie Adams, who was the very first love interest of the creature from the Black Lagoon, so we actually have some horror movie royalty in this film. Now, that's not the Halloween connection. We're getting there. We're getting there. But he's called into Julie Adams' office, and she makes a severe pass at him. Now, here's the thing. This is also a fairly disturbing pattern in a lot of these Elvis movies when they reach the all is lost moment. In most romantic comedies, when the outside female influence makes a pass at our male hero, it's usually meant as a misunderstanding. The woman throws herself at him, he's trying to resist, the girlfriend walks in at an inopportune time, gets the wrong idea, storms out, big misunderstanding, third act problem, all right? That's usually how it works. That is not how it works in an Elvis movie. I can think of only one of the ones I've seen, and I think it's Blue Hawaii. But in every other Elvis movie, somebody makes a pass at him while he is already in an established relationship, and he is all about it. He wraps his arms around her and goes to town. And then when Pam breaks in, catches them in the act, and is pissed off at him, he just can't understand why. And he sings a sad song about, "You're breaking my heart is broken." No, dude, you're wrong in this scenario, but everybody acts like it's her, like she is being unreasonable. One thing I can say, I'm really glad. I watched a lot of Elvis movies this past summer with my family, and I'm really glad I did for a number of reasons. Number one, they're fun. But number two, one thing that it has really done for me, and I mean this in all sincerity, this is not a joke, they have given me a greater respect for Elvis as a performer. You know, I'm of the age where I've never seen Elvis. I never saw him live. He's passed into that era of myth and legend. And when that happens, we, the people who are hearing the stories years later, don't always understand the true impact that the legend that you're talking about really left. And watching these movies, I get it. Maybe not as much as someone who was there and saw it, but I get it. The man has charisma. He has got charisma to spare, and he's a pretty charming guy to be completely honest. There's just charm in him. He's actually not a bad actor either. He has a real gift for comic timing. He delivers lines very quickly and with a really straight face. There's real talent there. This guy truly was the king. The problem is, I think a lot of these movies were relying on the fact that he had all this charisma and he had all this charm to allow his characters to get away with some pretty bullshit behavior. And this is one of the examples. So anyway, heartbroken, Lonnie leaves the Dude Ranch to go back on the rodeo circuit. But in the months he's gone, he just can't get Pam out of his head. He's blowing every event. He's not making any money. He has to go back to try to make things right with her. Okay. Fairly standard film, right? Not quite. There are some twists in this. Let's discuss. So, randomly, so I mentioned that, Pam starts out in the, "Ooh, I don't like you, I'm never going to like you," and then eventually she warms up to him. So what's the inciting incident that allows her to warm up to him? Well, out of nowhere in this film, just literally out of nowhere, Pam goes into her apartment one night and is nearly kidnapped. And Elvis comes in and saves the day. Then, at another scene where they are at a party, Pam is nearly kidnapped again. And again, thwarted by Elvis and his fists of fury. It turns out, are you ready? This is what I mean by these films just going off the rails in all these different directions. It turns out that Pam had an uncle, or a grandfather who somehow found some kind of lost treasure and buried it in an old ghost town just out, away from the Dude Ranch. And these men are attempting to kidnap her so that they can get her to decode the mysterious letter her grandfather sent her before she died so they can find the missing gold. I have to say that these kidnappers are simultaneously the worst and politest criminals I have ever seen in a film like this. First of all, they are terrible at their job. The second time that they attempt to kidnap her is right in the middle of a crowded party. Like with people everywhere. Everyone sees and hears this. I don't know what the plan was. What's the plan, Phil? Seriously. But here's the even funnier part of this. So they attempt to kidnap this girl twice. Twice they are thwarted by Elvis and his macho fight scenes. However, after Lonnie and Pam break up and Elvis goes away and he's gone, I counted, he's gone for at least 5 months. During this entire 5-month stretch, these guys never come back and attempt to kidnap her a third time, now that the one person who thwarted them in their previous attempts is no longer in the picture. They just kind of let her be. I don't know if that's a union rule, like you're not allowed to attempt to kidnap the damsel unless the potential hero is within 50 yards. Like, I don't know. But they were very polite about it and just let her kind of go on about her business to the point you forgot about the ghost town, and you figured that was just an excuse to have some weird sidetrack halfway through the film where they go to the ghost town and have a fantasy about all of them being in cowboys and Wild West uniforms for one of Elvis's songs. So, by this point, you are no doubt wondering, once again, why the hell am I talking about this movie for a Halloween review? What does this have to do with anything even remotely scary? Well, because we're taking another crazy detour. So, like, an hour and maybe 10 minutes into this movie, with 20 minutes left to go, somewhere in that vicinity, when Elvis returns from the rodeo to try to reconcile with Pam, Pam rides off towards the ghost town to go find the gold. Elvis and his comic sidekick chase after her. They get to the ghost town, they get caught in a heavy thunderstorm, and have to spend the night in the ghost town, and then out of nowhere, this becomes a haunted house movie. Out of nowhere, the last 20 to 30 minutes of this movie is Elvis, Pam, and their comic sidekick trapped in a haunted house. And it is the most bizarre tonal shift I could possibly have imagined. I thought the weird cowboy dream halfway through the film, or the sudden kidnapping and hidden story, or hidden treasure storylines were the most bizarre things. Nope, we're going haunted house on this bitch. We learn a very important lesson during this haunted house sequence. I think it is here that we truly learn something that I think so many of us take for granted, especially those of us who are the fans of classic comedy. We don't really appreciate how much work it takes and how much talent it takes to make being scared funny. We don't appreciate Lou Costello or the Three Stooges for the immense skill it takes to make a simple thing like reacting to a candle move and trying to say the words, "Oh, Chuck." How much skill it takes to make that a piece of comedy gold. Comedic legend, really. Until you are left with the cheap dime store knockoff. And the cheap dime store knockoff of this tale is one Jack Maloney as Stanley, the unfunny comic sidekick. Jack Maloney is essentially what would happen if someone decided they were going to clone Jerry Lewis and took him out of the cloning tube a month too early. And I'm saying this, saying that I never thought Jerry Lewis was that fucking funny. Oh my God. This guy is just unbearably obnoxious. Again, Lou Costello could shout, "Oh Chuck, oh Chuck, oh Chuck," because he watched a candle move on its own all day as far as I'm concerned. But watching this guy say the words Lonnie, Lonnie, Lonnie 500 times, it's like nails on a goddamn chalkboard. You know you're hitting the wrong notes when there's a scene where a secret panel in the fireplace slides away and a fist comes out and punches Stanley in the nose, and you're cheering. You want to see it happen again. Hit him again. Hit him again. Harder. Harder. Now, that all being said, again, I give Elvis a lot of credit. He's actually pretty good. I wish more of the missed secret passages and all that had been him, because he actually has some pretty good reactions to it. He's actually pretty funny being the straight man in this scenario. I'm also going to say, and again, I'm going to say this is not a joke. I'm not kidding when I say this. And you're going to think I'm just completely bullshitting, but I'm not. I give this movie a lot of credit for its haunted house sequence, and that there are some aspects to it that are genuinely creepy in the right way, not in a, kind of way, or, just kind of the way older movies can be sometimes. No, there's some actual, I'm not going to say scares, but there's some actual, that's a creepy image kind of thing. The people who are pretending to be dummies or, dressing up like monsters or whatever, the makeup is subtle, but there's something very unsettling about it. Of just a regular person with this, like, silver makeup on, sitting dead still and staring at you. It's freaking creepy. It really is. There's another part where guys in Halloween masks are kind of jumping out and scaring the people. And it actually is creepy because you know that they're real people. Maybe it's because we live in a world of, purge movies where people wearing clown masks and murdering people is like a common thing in film. So maybe there's some kind of programming going on there where the mundane can suddenly become scary. There's a scene where Pam is in her room and she opens the window and a guy in a werewolf mask, a very fake one, is standing there staring at her. It's fucking scary. Because it's actually a guy in a werewolf mask. So I give this movie some credit. This is actually kind of why I like this movie. Despite the insanity, actually because of the insanity, but because they do this haunted house thing at the end, that's actually kind of scary. I actually take my hat off to them. Well done. I enjoyed this movie. It's so batshit insane. It takes so many bizarre turns out of nowhere. And yet, there's something incredibly delightful about it. Okay, so let's wrap this up. Now, again, we don't do final grades for things like this, but we do have some categories that we're going to have to cover for these campy Halloween films. So, number one, we have to talk about what's the best song of the film. Because these campy films, they're more interested in getting to the next dance number than they are with really delivering you some frights. So there's a lot of songs in here. I am sad to say that this is a very hard choice because none of the songs in this are incredibly interesting. I'm going to have to go with the very first song that we hear, The Long Lonely Highway, which is how we're introduced to Elvis. Mainly it's because it's kind of catchy. It starts the film off on a strong note, and yeah, it's a little bit, it stands out a little bit more. The problem with these Elvis movies, one of the problems with these Elvis movies, is that, like I said, they were there to sell Elvis records. Well, you're pumping out 32 movies. I'm gonna turn this light on. You're pumping out 32 bloody movies, which means you gotta populate these movies with a lot of songs. There's like 11 songs in this. And there is not a Viva Las Vegas, Heartbreak Hotel, Return to Sender, Can't Help Falling in Love with You in the bunch. They're all just very generic and forgettable. And I think that's what makes these Elvis movies sometimes very difficult to get through, is they are just, those songs go on just shy of forever, and they're not very memorable in most cases. So, Long Lonely Highway gets the nod for the best song of the film simply because it's the least boring. It's still a boring song, but, it's the least dull. Another feature we're going to cover here, the best reused costume. Something we're going to see in a lot of these films is that because they're shot for, no budget most of the time, they are reusing costumes and monster effects from previous crappy movies. We're going to see some mainstays from Mystery Science Theater popping up on these films. Sad to say, there is no notable reused monster footage for this one. I think the werewolf mask might have been in a separate werewolf movie, but I can't pick which one. So it's not a really memorable bad mask. It's just kind of a generic werewolf mask. But I'm pretty sure it was used for a black and white werewolf movie some place along the line. So that segment kind of peters out and is a little anticlimactic for the first time, but I promise they'll get better. They really will. So that is the opening for This Is Halloween reviews for this year's Campy Classics. So thank you for joining me, and be sure to be with us next time when us and some good, clean-cut kids will encounter the ghost of Drag Strip Hill. So as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.